So it's been over a year since I did my first art bag video, and at that time I only had 4 subscribers, and as I've got over 1,000 now, I thought it was about time I did an updated video. When I put together the first kit, it was a lot of thought went into it, and I thought about all sorts of different scenarios of, you know, what would work in this situation or that situation. And for the most part that worked pretty well, but as I've been using it over the last year, you know, it's less theory now and it's more practical of what actually worked and what kind of tweaks I've made along the way. And one thing that's not changed is my art kit is on hand, ready to go at a moment's notice. I just keep the bag at the side of my sofa, so, you know, if in an evening I'm just sat on the sofa and I feel that urge to draw, then I can just grab the bag and everything's there ready for me. I don't have to go upstairs to my craft room and gather all my supplies together. It's just all there ready for me. So let's have a look and see what's the same, what's been tweaked ever so slightly, and what's had slightly bigger changes. So first of all, let's think about bags. And this is a rucksack that I showed last year in my video, and the same applies now, that this is a bag which only gets used occasionally, and this is for, you know, if I'm going to be out all day and I'm taking lunch with me as well, or if I want to take an extra flask or, you know, extra kind of supplies, the size of the bag does not affect how many art supplies I take. I fit my art supplies into a small bag, and then this one only gets used if there are extra non-art supplies that I need to take with me as well. And then thinking about the bag for the actual art kit on its own, last year I was using this bag. It's a fake leather backpack that I got secondhand, and this was working really well. The only downside really was that because the shoulder straps are quite narrow, that even though it wasn't particularly heavy, if I was carrying it for a long time, it did sort of cut into my shoulders a little bit. But it was, you know, it was working pretty well. Then I'd watched a few videos of people talking about nature journaling and how a crossbody bag works better, because you can access your supplies without actually having to take your backpack off completely. So then I bought this bag, which is slightly bigger, and it's got the crossbody strap or a shoulder strap, and I've been using this one more recently, and it seems to be working even better than the backpack. And I have added a few more supplies, so the fact that it's slightly bigger is kind of helpful too. But I think this is the biggest I would go. I wouldn't really want to go any bigger than this for my art kit. And if you saw my previous art bag video, you might remember this pencil case, which I was particularly gushy about how wonderful it was. And at the time, like when I watched back the recording, I was a little bit embarrassed about how enthusiastic I was about this pencil case. But I now feel quite justified because I've been using it for over a year and I still absolutely love it. It just pops down like that so that you can easily see everything that's in there. You can just grab without having to rummage around like a traditional horizontal pencil case. So yeah, I still really love it. If you're looking for something like this or similar, I'll put a link in the description to this one, or the closest I can find anyway. And then in terms of what goes in the pencil case, first of all I've got this Bic pen, which is like the 4-colour, although it's not actually 4-colour, it's 3-colour plus a mechanical pencil. And again, I'll try and find a link to that if I can. This has been so useful, having the pencil. And initially, this was the only pencil that I carried in this kit. But because this is also a pen which I sometimes use you know, if I'm literally going out just with a tiny sketchbook and one pen, you know, this is like my emergency sketch kit. If I just want to put that in my normal handbag or even in my pocket. So sometimes I forget to put this pen back in. So for that reason, I have also added a normal pencil. It's just a normal HB pencil. And this is one where, you know, I added the pencil extender because it's not too short to use. I mean, it's a fine length to use, but obviously when it's in the pot, it is getting a little on the short side. So I just bought some of the pencil extenders that have got a wooden end, and then I just cut it to length so that it's sort of basically cut it so it was the longest it could be to still work in the pencil case. So that's my straightforward pencil for sketching, and then also my multicolour just biro and mechanical pencil. Along with the mechanical pencil, I've got the spare leads for it, and although I don't particularly need to carry that with me, all my other mechanical pencils are 0.5, whereas this one's 0.7. So it just made sense to me to keep this in here. So that just goes in one of the inside pockets. And then for the majority of my sketching, I use fine liners. So I've got 3 of the Unipin pens. So I've got 0.1, 0.3 and 0.5. And they just pop in there. And this was one of the advantages of having the vertical, because I can see what size pen. Oh, it's my cat going out the cat flap. Why does he always want to go out the cat flap when I'm filming a video? Yeah, so I can see straight away which size I'm grabbing, whereas if they were in a horizontal pencil case, I mean, it's still got the size on there, but it's just not so obvious. In my previous art bag video, I think I had a couple more sizes of the pens, but I've realised that the 0.13 and 5 is adequate for what I do. You notice the absence of a brush pen. I did have a brush pen a year ago, and then I realised it was a complete waste of time. Why am I carrying around this brush pen and never, like literally never using it? So that doesn't get carried with me anymore. And then I've got a white pen. This is the Jelly Roll 10, which is handy for highlights. Previously I did have a couple of other whites as well, but I find that just this one works fine. And then a more recent addition to the sketching side of things is a fountain pen. This is just a really cheap one that I got from Temu. Seems to work well. I like the option because the fine liners are waterproof, which is great. Oh, now my cat's coming back in again. The waterproof is great if you want to add watercolour over the top, but I quite like the addition of a water-soluble ink as well, and then the effects that you can get just with kind of watering it down, so to speak. So that's the actual sketching, the initial drawing part of my kit. A couple of other bits which I carry which go in the pockets is I've got this, it's like a razor with a built-in sharpener at the bottom, so it collects the sharpening, so I'm not making a mess. Again, that just sits in one of the pockets inside. And then the other items which I keep in the third internal pocket is special supplies for a windy day. So I've got a couple of hair bands and then just a couple of little bulldog clips just to hold the pages down if it's particularly windy. And I normally just clip them onto the hair bands just so that it's easier to grab hold of them. Just fold them over themselves. and then that just gets tucked in the other pocket, just so that I can grab those out if I need to. Okay, so now let's think about colour. So previously I had a set of watercolour pencils, and I've upgraded those to Inktense pencils. And if you saw the video that I did a while back about Inktense, the first time I used Inktense was when I had a set of 6, which was a special offer that I got free from Derwent, and I loved them, but I wasn't prepared to pay the price. So initially my plan was to just use the 6 and to see how I could kind of mix the colours together and get the most effect from just those 6. But after a while I realised the reason for me having coloured pencils, whether that's straightforward coloured pencils, whether that's watercolour pencils or Inktense, is for the convenience. You know, if it's a location or a situation or just my mood where watercolour doesn't seem appropriate, then this is kind of like an easy, convenient option to use instead. As I said, I didn't want to pay out the cost for the Inktense because, well, I'm tight. So what I did was I actually bought this set second-hand from eBay. So I got a set of 24 for a lot cheaper than I would have done if I'd bought them new. Like I said, they look like they'd probably only been used once. And they just sit in there as well. It's a little bit tighter than it was before because I think my watercolour pencils that I had before, I think there was 15 I think I had in the end, whereas these are 24, so obviously it takes up a little bit more room. And I've also added the fountain pen, which wasn't in there before, but I have got less of the fine liners and less white pens, so it's slightly fuller than it was before, but it still works fine. And then the only other item which is kept in here is a water brush. Again, I'm sure you all know what the water brush is, but basically it unscrews. You fill this part up with water, and then you've got a brush which has got its own supply of water, so you can just give it a little squeeze to get the water out of the tip. This is another item which I've reduced the quantity, because last year when I did my art bag video I had 3 of these which had come in a set, and it's kind of wearing off a little bit now, but I'd put marks on the ends of the caps so I could tell which size brush it was just from looking at the top. But as I'd been using these less, I decided that I only needed to carry the one that I used most often. So there you go, that's my pencil case. And yeah, like I say, I still really love it. It's just so lovely. Like if you're sat on a park bench, you can just put it on the bench next to you, you know, or even on the floor. It's just really handy. And also, since my new bag is the crossbody bag, I have even used this where I've opened it up and I've just left it inside the bag, and just had these kind of sat inside the bag, so I was just, you know, grab what I wanted as I went along. So that's my favourite pencil case. You see, I'm still gushing about the pencil case. I'm sure it's not normal. And then the other items which I use for adding colour to my sketches is watercolour. So this is the same tin of 15 paints that I was using a year ago, and I've recently done a video specifically about the paints that I've got in here. But yeah, I'm still using the same tin, just using the lid for mixing, and it's just been working great. I've got the ring on the back so that I can kind of just put it on my thumb. So when I talked about this previously, I'd had this idea that if I was out and about and I was sketching or painting, standing up, I've got this wristband, well, you can see how mucky it is now, but would put the wristband on, and then I can be holding my paints on my thumb. I can also be holding my sketchbook so that I'm then free to paint. And at that point I was focusing more on the water brush, so the wristband was for, you know, wiping off the paint off the water brush. But in reality, it's rare that I've needed to use that. Like I hardly ever sketch or paint standing up. I like to be comfortable. So I'm usually finding a bench or somewhere that I can, you know, be relatively comfortable. I do still use this occasionally, but to be honest, mostly I just use a bit of kitchen towel. But the wristband is handy, especially, you know, if it is windy, that you don't have to worry about holding on to the paper towel to stop it blowing away or whatever. So I do still use the wristband, but not as much as I expected to. And the other paint that I'd added is this little tin of white gouache. I don't use it very often, but it's such a small little tin. It's just got, sorry, that was a bit loud. It's got like a little clip lid. That was just an old promotional item from years ago that I'd had from work, and it was like one of those little tins that was just too good to get rid of, but I never knew what to do with it. So it was perfect when I decided to add some white gouache to my painting collection. Before, I thought I was just going to use the water brushes, and on my holiday that I went on last year, I did some paintings with the water brushes, but I'd also taken with me some normal paint brushes to use just when I was back in my accommodation in the evening, not to use while I was out and about. Let me just move these aside. And I discovered that I much preferred using real brushes. So I invested in these. I say invested, I mean they weren't massively expensive, but I bought this set of travel brushes. So I've got a size 12, a size 8 and a size 4. And because I mostly work small, well, I almost entirely work small, I very, very rarely use the biggest one. And I mostly use the small one. And I thought what I'd actually really like is a size 2. Well, this set obviously was a set of 3. So I bought a separate size 2. And you see the size variation between, you know, the 12, the 8 and the 4. So I was expecting that the 2 would be, you know, just kind of continuing that size. Well, it was a different brand. The size 2 I bought was actually Winsor & Newton. Look how tiny that is. It's so tiny, but I love it. I use it so much. So mostly I use the 2 smaller ones, but I'm not quite at the point yet where I'm ready to take the bigger ones out of my kit. I mean, they all fit in this one little pouch, so, you know, for now I'm just keeping the set together plus the little one. And of course, having upgraded to real brushes rather than just using the water brush means I also need to carry water with me. So I've got this little jar. It's just an old coffee jar. It was just like a sample coffee jar that I've literally had for decades, and I have even dropped it a couple of times, although not from a great height, I have to admit, and it's been fine. But just to give it a little bit of extra protection, I just use the wristband, and it's just the perfect size just to just to slip the jar inside the wristband, and it's just got a bit of extra protection just in case. Just a couple more things that I keep in the bag. I've just got an empty plastic bag, like a Ziploc bag, so if I'm, you know, want to put anything in there that's wet, or if it's a particularly wet day and I'm worried about, you know, my sketchbook getting damp inside my bag, then sometimes I might put my sketchbook inside here just to make sure it stays dry. And the other item, which when I showed this last time, I'd not actually used it. This is a little blanket which is supposedly waterproof. It's just a very thin sheet. It's kind of like, I don't know, I suppose it's a little bit like tent material. I'm not really sure how to describe it, but it's just a very thin material, and it just opens up, you know, fairly large. And I have used this a couple of times when I've sat like on damp grass, or if there's, you know, it's not raining but like the benches are still wet from when it was raining, you know, earlier in the day or the day before or whatever. And it works pretty well. I mean, I don't think it's completely waterproof, but it works pretty well if, you know, you're just sat on something that's a bit damp. And then as you can see, it fits quite neatly back in its own little pouch. It's not like one of those things that's been like vacuum packed by machine and is impossible for a human being to put it back in the same pouch. It fits in quite nicely. Okay, so let's just see how it all fits in the bag. On the inside, in the very back pocket, that's where I've just put the plastic bag and the waterproof blanket. They're just tucked away in the internal pocket. And then the main pencil case just goes in that back main section. Obviously I have a sketchbook as well going in there. So at the moment I'm using this sketchbook which I made myself. If you'd like to make your own sketchbook, I'll attach a link to the tutorial that I did when I made this book. So that just fits in there as well. And then in the this main section there's actually another pocket. So there's plenty of room in there for, you know, a bottle of drinking water, purse, phone, keys, you know, anything else that you might want to take with you. And then in the front pocket, this is where I keep the specifically watercolour things. So I've got my jar of water with its little cosy, my main tin of paints, my white gouache, the brushes, and a bit of kitchen towel. Then there's another small pocket at the front which I don't currently use for anything, and that's the same kit that I use whether I'm at home or going out anywhere. And then last month when I went on holiday, I also took this extra pouch with me, and these were extra bits that I wanted to take that I just left in my accommodation, not to be carried around with me during the day. So I had things in there like a little mini stapler, a little Tipp-Ex mouse for when I made mistakes in the written part of my holiday journal, a little ruler, scissors, a glue stick, a normal pen. So this wasn't even to do with my art journal. This was in case I wanted to just make notes in a normal sketchbook or a normal notebook, or, you know, if I was going to do a crossword or something like that. So just a normal pen. I got the little pipette, which is just to make it a bit easier for me filling up the water in the water brush. And I used to keep this in the pencil case, but I found that not once did I ever need to use it while I was out and about. So I just took it with me on holiday just in case I needed to top up the water brush on an evening. I had an extra uni pin. This one is 0.8. So this is the pen that I was using for writing in my art journal while I was on holiday. I had a spare white gel pen, and I had an extra little kit with some metallic watercolours. And again, I didn't feel the need to carry these with me each day. It was just, you know, if I wanted to add any metallic details, I could do that when I was back at my accommodation. I did actually use the silver a couple of times. Probably my next video will be flicking through my holiday sketches, and you'll see where I used the silver when I get around to doing that. And then the last couple of things that were in here were just some spare kitchen towel and an additional sketchbook. And the reason I had this other sketchbook was because this was the one I was using during Inktober, and while I was on holiday I was still carrying on with my Inktober sketches. So that didn't need to come with me on my days out. That again just stayed in the accommodation because I was just doing the Inktober sketches in the evening. So that was just the extra bits that I took. I did show you this sketchbook, which is my current sketchbook, but I didn't take this one with me on holiday. I had this one, which has got from my holiday sketches from last year, and also then from this year. Like I say, I'll do a separate video on that soon to show that in a little bit more detail. So yeah, obviously that also fitted in just as easily as this tall one that I've been using. And there is just one more item to show you. And this is a fairly recent addition that I've had, which is a little folding stool. And this just lives in the boot of my car. I don't tend to carry it with me unless I know I'm going to need it. So it just opens up. Well, you're not going to be able to see that very clearly on the camera, but I'll show a picture of what it's like. It's got a little pocket attached, so that when you've taken off the cover for the stool, that can just be folded up or screwed up and just tucked in that pocket, so you don't have to worry about losing the cover. It's pretty light. I should have weighed it and actually let you know how much it is. So this just lives in the boot of my car, and I only tend to take it out with me when I'm going sketching if I know I'm either only going to be walking a short distance, because I don't, even though it's quite light, I don't really want to be carrying it unless I need to. So often it'll be a case of if I've driven to a park, for example, and I'm just going to be walking from the car, walk around the park, maybe sit and do a sketch. So for example, in the summer this year, there was a display of sculptures around my town in various different parks and shopping areas and places. I still need to do a video about this as well. I've got so many video ideas, but yeah, quite a few of these were done with me sat on this stool, because I was just going to a particular location, do my sketch, and then back to the car. So it's really handy, but I don't carry it around with me everywhere. And then just one last thing I want to show you, which is not specifically connected to my art bag, but if you've not already told me where you're watching from, please let me know, because I've been colouring in the places as people tell me where they're watching from, and I just love to see the map getting filled in. So if you wouldn't mind letting me know what country you're in, or if you're in America or Canada, you know, if you can let me know what part of the country you're in, that would be great, because it's always fun when I get a new section that I can colour in. So I hope that you've found this video interesting. If you did see my previous video from a year ago, I hope that it was interesting to see what minor changes that I've made. And if you didn't see my previous video, I hope it's not been too annoying every time I keep referencing, oh, last year I had this and So I hope it's been fun and interesting and helpful for anybody that's thinking about setting up their own art bag or tweaking their art bag that they've already got. I'll try and link as many products as I can in the description below, and I've mentioned quite a few other videos as well, so there'll be all sorts of links in the description for you to have a look at if you want. Thank you very much for your time. I know it's been quite a long rambly video today, so thank you for your patience, and hopefully see you again soon.